Hello everybody, my name is Bill and this is SixRounds Studio. If this is your first time here, welcome. We do all things gun restorations and such. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Today what we're going to do is something special. Now, the buttstock is done. Literally the finishes are done. If you've been following along with that process, then you know where we've been. You know that the last episode we rubbed this out with rotten stone. Since then I've put on 2 more coats of finish. It's ready, it looks good. So from this point we need to start putting on all of the parts that go on this gun stock. If you've been following along on my Instagram, then you know that I've been working on this grip cap. It's either Bakelite or hard rubber. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is. But in that Instagram post, I cleaned this thing up with some acetone, and below it, believe it or not, was all kinds of really kind of cool details, and you can see a close-up of that on the Instagram page. Today, I had to do some repairs. I had to patch some chips that are in it, so I mixed up some black epoxy and applied that yesterday and gave it 24 hours to dry. If you've been following the channel, you know how I do the black epoxy, you know how I apply it, so you can go back and watch one of those videos and see the details of that. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the blue tape, obviously, and then we're going to file away the excess epoxy. I'm going to take some fine sandpaper and polish up that edge that goes around it. Also on today's episode, I'm going to polish and blue this little screw. As well, these screws on the back of the butt pad, I had to polish those up, and I'm going to blue those at the same time. When that is done, when this cap is installed, when the screws are blued, the buttstock gets put away, it gets wrapped up so it stays safe. It's going to get put away, and then we can consider that part of the project, the restoration, is done. That's been 8 months of my life just trying to do the restoration on this buttstock alone. There's a whole series of videos on this in the catalog. If you're new to the channel, head on over to the playlist for the Ithaca restoration, and you can see all of the videos that I put out just doing the repair and restoration to this buttstock. It's quite extensive, and I welcome you to come over and watch all that. All right, so let's get started on this grip cap. So the first thing I have to do is remove the blue tape. Now, the blue tape serves as nothing more than a dam to hold back the epoxy as the epoxy was setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a file and I'm going to file that away. So let's go ahead and get that done. All right, so we got that edge all fixed up right now. I'm going to use a piece of 600 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to try to polish up that edge right around where the epoxy was. So I'm wanting to bring the level of polish that this plastic or rubber has, so that it matches the original, you know, as closely as is reasonable. And we're going to sort of check it against the wood itself. And I'm going to tell you that's a win, because that looks really good. I know you're never going to see this like I can see it, but it fits really well. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is polish the screw that goes into the cap, and then we'll get both that screw and the 2 screws for the butt blued up, and then again we'll call this done. So polishing up this screw is really pretty much of a simple deal here. I have a little slotting file bit, and just simply getting into that slot and just running this file only to clean up any edges, rough edges that might have occurred to that slot over the years. In this case, this screw is in remarkable condition. This cap never came out, and it obviously never got beat up all that much. I'm going to use a fine file in order to take any burrs off. So we're going to run the lathe, the Atlas lathe, and then we're going to use the file in order to get any of those burrs off. So let's do that. So that starts the polishing process. The next thing I'm going to do is I have several grits of paper, 180, 220, and then 320. We'll finish up with the 320. That gloss will be enough for these screws. So let's start that three-part polishing process. Good, looks good. I'm sure you can't see it, but that's what it looks like. Let's go ahead and get it blued. We're using simple rust blue to get these screws done. Now, one of the things that is critical is that you get these things immaculately clean. And there's a lot of ways to do this. If I was doing a larger piece, I'd probably be using something like a simple green or some really good, powerful household degreaser. In this case, the parts are small. I'm using or soaking these in acetone, and the acetone removes the dirt and the grease pretty well. Once you've got them clean, you don't want to be touching them with your hands. For larger parts, I'd be using gloves, but in this case, I'm using just a pair of needle nose pliers. We need to heat the part up. It doesn't need to be particularly hot, but we need to heat it up. Apply the rust blue chemical. And what will happen is it'll turn brown, and brown is a good color to start with. Let that set up for just a second. Now I've got distilled water boiling in this hot plate. I've also got a stainless steel dish and a stainless steel wire mesh like you would use in a kitchen. I'm going to drop that in there, put it in the boiling water. The boiling water sets the chemical, it sets the color. You want to let that boil for about 5 minutes. That helps ensure that that color is set as deeply as it can. So the last thing we have to do is something called carding. Carding is removing the rust residue from the chemical process. I use a 4/0 steel wool. Again, you want to make sure that you don't contaminate this. I keep it in a baggie. You're never going to see this on the camera because the parts are so small. But what happens is, once you begin to card it off, you get this really rich black or black-blue color, which is what you're looking for. Now they also have available something called carding wheels, which is a stainless steel fine wire brush that you put in a mill or a lathe rather, or onto some spindle, and it does the same thing. It's because it's a fine wire. It removes that rust residue and brings that shine up. I've never bought one. Not opposed to using one. It's just I don't have one. Now each component, each part tends to take blue slightly differently. Sometimes they all look exactly the same, sometimes they don't. So you're using your eye, you're using your artistic eye, and you're trying to get the best color that you can. Again, looking for consistency. And then each time you do this, you're going to bring a richer blue out. So you can do this or repeat this process as many times as you want. Close enough. Looks good. So Mark Lee, who produces the rust blue chemical, neither encourages nor discourages neutralizing the chemical. You can usually neutralize it with baking soda or something like that. For simple things like screws, I almost never neutralize. Again, you can do that if you want. When I use larger frames or things that have lots of deep recesses, I then generally soak it in a bath of baking soda. Baking soda and water warmed up. That way it gets into those recesses that sometimes the oil can't get into. So I do that, and then when I've finished that, I usually bake it in the oven at about 180 degrees or so to flash off all the water that might get into these different recesses. And then I finish up with an oil bath. But in this case, because the parts are so small, all I've got is some basic machine oil, and I'm just adding that machine oil to the parts. That'll help stop the rust bluing process. And remember, we've had this in boiling water, so so for these small parts, that's generally all I do. And like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I haven't had any issues with it. So that's my method.